afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our challenges session, which is related to the title, Sustainable Tourism as a Driver for Global Climate Neutrality, towards climate neutrality, which means in our session to have this perspective from top-down, global top-down to local approach and bottom-up approach. And in the middle, we have also this European dimension, which is bringing together the two different approaches. So in our session, we will have 3 different panels, and we will listen from this top-down approach, global perspective about policies and strategies on sustainable tourism development. In the same time, we will have in the second panel more approaches related to the territory, the local level, what is doing the municipality, what is doing the public sector towards this climate neutrality goal in tourism and in mobility. And also for the final panel, we will have this European dimension, which is also showcasing experiences from the ground, but also at European level. So this is a really interchange and really willingness to demonstrate that all the sector, all the levels are interconnected and they can have a very harmonized approach. So for this reason, I would like to give the floor first to Mrs. Gordon Silence, who is an ICT Director for Tourism 2030, and we will listen in particular from him how it's important also to consider sustainability towards 2030 in the framework of the Agenda 2030 and the 17 SDGs goals. So please, the floor is yours, Gordon.
Thank you very much, Cinzia. I'd just like to let people know from a personal point of view, I'm living in Monchique in Portugal, and I'd like to take this theme personally. I've been working on biodiversity conservation and climate change in Monchique, where Bonelli's eagle and the Iberian lynx are the keystone species. And this should really be the focus of climate change mitigation and adaptation for the tourism sector, where we can preserve these for future tourism industries of our next generation, so that we can have a genuine sustainable tourism in the future. And this initiative, which I'm going to walk you through now, Travel Green Planet, is using tourism as a vector for sustainable development. Before I start, as you change screens, please, I'd just like to thank DG Klima, and I'd like to thank DG Grow, the COSME program, IASME, for supporting our work, and other agencies in the European Union and the UN over the years. Look at all the people we've brought together over the years. If you change the slide now, please, what you'll be able to do is we'll be able to go through these issues, keep on clicking through, and you'll see that we have global change, all the biodiversity loss, socioeconomic equality. You all know about this. It's all joined up thinking we're going to need to deal with these issues. But if you're looking at one sector that can stimulate sustainability in all other sectors, whether it's agriculture for food or construction for making accommodation, tourism, this is the one as the vector for sustainable development. And using the SDGs, SDP 12 for the biodiversity, climate change, life underwater, life above water, all of these biodiversity considerations, but SDG 17. And if we continue, please, to the next screen, what you'll be able to see is that there would be a complexity. And my job as an ICT director, I've spent 2 decades trying to bring the digital world to make sure that our work can be done collaboratively and effectively. And you can see here in the European Tourism Going Green project, a message which would bring sustainability information providers and business support organizations together to make sure that SMEs and destinations can be certified in a third-party way, so that the supply chains can be green to protect both the people and the other species in the protected areas and other tourism destinations. So Tourism 2030 is the ICT platform we use to do this. If you change again, please. It's complexity. And I'm not going into this model in 5 minutes, but this is what underlies the ability to develop a global cluster of stakeholders from local to global level. And you can see we have the model there. It's in not only model form, but it works on Tourism 2030. And if you want to think about how to meet climate change and biodiversity and all these other challenges, we must collaborate. So if you take to the next slide, to get these ICT, this is the simplicity, the Travel Green Europe app. Everybody should download it. It's at the beginning stage. We want you all to own it. We want everybody to be in the cluster to own this. We would have green travel maps to be developed by the professionals, and then in your pocket, the consumers can find that information to make their green travel choices. The app exists. Please find it on the Android and the Apple Store systems and download it and help us improve it over the next 10 years. So please, if we change again, this is what you would see on it from your local nature, your local issues, or the country issues, Travel Green Germany. And we have the biggest global sustainable tourism marketplace, 16,000 items at the moment. We want to see all of this to limit greenwashing. And you can see the list on the right there, the accommodation, camping sites, services, tourism packages, everything can be third-party certified in the supply chains. Use the app to collaborate to do this. It saves us all a lot of time and money. If we continue, my last slide, please, to get this 5 minutes finished. The main thing I'm worried about now after 30 years in this game is not greenwashing, but time washing. And this COP26 has been part of that. We must not put dates back beyond 2030. We have a countdown program. I was part of the Millennium Goals. I was part of the Water for All campaign in 1985. Please do not let us slip beyond the 2030 deadline. No time washing, no greenwashing. Use us as a practical implementation tool. Collaborate with us. The time is ticking. And I really would love to see you all on board this initiative. And now I'll leave the floor for everyone else. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gordon. And your presentation shows how important it is not only to implement the Agenda 2030, in particular with specific goals, as you were mentioning, to 12, which is the measurement of tourism impact, as well to 17, the global partnership. But you were also showing how it's important to develop concrete tools using technologies, digitalization, mapping, and also having this very short-term goal in front of us, because we need to achieve now the goal of climate neutrality if we want to link to climate neutrality. So your approach is very inspiring for concrete action, which will be now also demonstrated in the forthcoming panels. But I just would like to add also my position as European Climate Pact ambassador. I'm really in favor and encouraging actions like what you are going to say in order to map and to see how you can combine different also aspects of sustainability, like you were saying, biodiversity loss is a big pillar in this framework of the environmental protection related to tourism. So that's very important, Gordon. Thank you very much. But we will have maybe a few minutes later to make a round table and to ask you a key message for this final. Today is the final, also the closing session of COP26. So we have to deliver at least one message concrete to also to the audience. Anyway, so I would like to give the floor now to Oliver Hillel, who is head of unit mainstreaming and secretariat of the Convention of Biodiversity UN Environment. Still, we are in the biodiversity framework. But this is interesting because we are covering, as I said, the top-down approach, but also looking at strategies and policies in place. Thank you, Oliver. The floor is yours.
Thank you, and as I thank you so much, Cynthia. It's a real pleasure to be part of this distinguished panel at such an important moment. And as you were all mentioning, this is the last day of an event that will mark our lifetimes. I mean, this is whether you considered it a complete success or a complete failure, it certainly shows where we are in terms of climate change and everything. And I'd like to start by saying that I've heard it from several people. I'm not there in Glasgow, but several people said that this was also the COP of nature and people. so that the links between the indivisible links between the climate and the nature emergency are clear to everyone. And if we're talking about carbon neutrality, let's remember that there's a system that has not only achieved carbon neutrality, but carbon homeostasis, meaning balance, and that system is called nature. So if we go for the nature positive solutions, and if we put nature at the center of the solutions, then we achieve all of the SDGs. Anyway, that was my first point. The second point was to say that we have a unique opportunity for the tourism sector in that we are formulating a new plan for the next 10 years for the entire UN system, for all countries on earth, with the exception of the United States, which is also very much a contributor to it, a plan for nature, to put nature at the service of all the sectors, including tourism. In fact, in the Convention on Biological Diversity, tourism is one of the 9 sectors that they see as contributing. And we'll talk about that in a second, but all of you will hear about it too. But the fact is we have this opportunity. There is a global biodiversity framework. We will have COP15 of biodiversity in its second phase in April in Kunming in China. So all the lessons that are being learned in Glasgow should now be taken into making nature a part of the tourism equation, of the tourism sector equation. There's a mainstreaming plan in the convention. There are ways for business and finance to engage. So this is an important point as well. And I think this is also relevant to mention that many of the speakers today were involved in the generation of the guidelines for sustainable tourism within the Convention on Biological Diversity. The last thing I wanted to raise is why. First and foremost, I have been to 70 countries, and I know that there is hardly a country on earth in which protected areas are not partially financed by tourism and visitation. So the issue of tourism and protected areas is essentially linked. We need to put tourism at the service of protected areas and what we call in the convention other effective conservation area-based measures. We're not talking only about national parks. We're not talking even about municipal or state parks. We're talking about parks managed by indigenous people or by local communities. We're talking about biosphere reserves. We're talking about other ways to manage the mosaics of land use using visitation and tourism as a basis. And I think there's hardly a question how relevant that is. And I just want to add some post-COVID issues to that. One of them is that as we relax and tourism begins to breathe again, which is good to hear, we're seeing a lot of the opposite problems. Some protected areas are being again loved to death because people go very close by and therefore they create a problem on the opposite. We also must think that visibility that tourism brings is a great detractor for hunting, for instance, illegal hunting and other ways to illegally destroy nature. It is very important to keep the tourism machinery. We see that very often with the nature-based tourism champions of today. There are many networks of ecotourism champions doing a great job there are many parks that exist in the world because of tourism players. But these people now need specific help to adjust to the post-COVID protocol in tourism, because there is not the same operation. We have a different operation, both in terms of the supply chain, as well as in terms of the services the sector supplies. So all I want to finish here is to say that engaging in the Convention on Biological Diversity for the tourism sector, I think, is now a very good way forward, because it will help the sector present itself for what it is, a part of the solution to the climate and nature emergency. Thank you, Cynthia, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you very much, Oliver. Indeed, I wanted to create a link between your presentation and the previous one from Gordon, because there are lots of complementarities in between, especially regarding biodiversity loss. You were explaining very clearly to what extent it will be important to have a next steps after COP26 towards COP15 next year in China on the Convention of Biodiversity, biological biodiversity. Therefore, that's very important to highlight. It's a good also to have in mind the importance of protected areas, which can play also a very major role towards climate neutrality if we put in place guidelines on sustainable tourism and ecotourism. So this is concrete approach, and that's why it's important to have this big picture in mind. But now it's time to give the floor to Mr. Geoffrey Lippmann, who is the president of SANIX Malta, and he had already, I appreciated a lot since many years with this idea of climate-friendly travel register. So I would like to listen, and we can listen from him how also the tourism is impacted by the transport link with the, especially with the aviation. But we can listen from him another important piece of concrete initiatives in place and regarding sustainability on tourism. Please, Geoffrey, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Cynthia. I thought you'd forgotten me. I want to talk about what I'm calling Code Red for climate-friendly travel, which is integrating the SDGs and the Paris 1.5 targets. And I want to make 3 points. First, the past is prologue. The climate crisis is here today. Our world is facing a code red moment. Second, Europe is at the epicenter of global response, regulation, markets, and finance. And third, sustainable mobility is the cornerstone. Now, the first 2 of these points are no-brainers. Code Red has permeated all of the Glasgow conference. It reflects what the UN Secretary General and the IPCC say science is telling us, as well as what we've seen with the extreme weather disasters, including in Germany and Belgium, the flooding, and the voices of our young activists. And the second point, EU leadership is a reality. It's a tribute to the Fit 55 framework, as well as the actions of the Commission on climate resilience and response. It's the third issue, sustainable mobility, which is the essence of the pivotal travel and tourism sector that I want to focus my remarks on today. This sector is a massive 10% of the economy, and it affects every single citizen, as Gordon said, every day, whether they're a visitor or a resident. It affects cities, it affects infrastructure, it affects stock markets, and it affects trade. Without mobility, there would be no European past. And without sustainability, there will be no future. Let's be clear, this is a really important point. Even if all the Glasgow ambitions are delivered, it will not be enough to guarantee that we meet our Paris targets. And history tells us we are failing badly so far. We've already used much of our remaining planet-safe carbon budget, and we're on a path towards an unsustainable 3 degrees by the end of the century, when, to quote Thomas Hobbes, life will be nasty, brutish, and short, with a projected billion climate refugees in play. And yes, Cynthia, it's true, the Glasgow Tourism Declaration and the Race to Zero, and we've signed the declaration as a launch partner, it's a good first campaign, but it's only a campaign. To win the war, we will have to go further faster to respond to the science, the weather, and the understandably angry voices of the next generation. And we must aim high, because there are no second chances with planetary boundaries. And that's next Malta, we're calling not for a race to zero, but it's a dash to zero. We believe we should be aiming for net zero carbon by 2030, not 2050. The next critical 10 years must surely be enough for offset supported transition. And after that, we must target zero greenhouse gas by 2050, not just net zero carbon. Our clean energy transformation must be complete. No more pushing it off into the future, business as usual fudging. No more fossil fuel genocide. And as Cynthia mentioned, we're trying to walk the walk at Senex Malta, not just talk the talk. Train strong climate champions as virtual interns to help companies and communities who are trying to make the transformation. And if we look forward to 2030,
Gordon, we have some problem in the internet connection. We can't hear you very well. Sorry for that. I don't know if Geoffrey is still there connected with us. I see the PowerPoint.
Yeah, hello. Hello. Hello, can you hear me, Cynthia?
Yes, yes, now yes. Go ahead, please.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure where you lost me at. That's the problem. Let me try and finish this by describing to you the kind of world that I think we need to be aiming at in the world, but with Europe as a lead. It means that we need clean energy vehicles only for surface transport, high-speed, no-carbon rail, including new night train networks and electric planes for intercity transport, non-polluting ships for rivers and ferries, and last but no means least, zero greenhouse gas aviation. And yes, I know the aviation industry has trumpeted its conversion to zero net carbon 2050 in the last months. But that's not a good enough prospect for the next generation. Net is not zero. Carbon is only 75% of greenhouse gases. So I believe we need to have a kind of all-in moonshot approach to help aviation become greenhouse gas compliant, and let Europe take the lead to bring big government, big airlines, big airports, big cities, big fossil fuel suppliers, and big research players together to solve this issue. Not in incremental half-hearted grandmother steps, but with a big leap forward. It's more important that we fix the aviation system than giving glitzy awards. It's more important than complex personal footprint metrics. It's more important than sexy space tourism. If we have survived and built the last 75 years of our common European integration, we can surely apply our shared creativity and passion to the next 30. It's simply unacceptable that planes could be flying in 2050 that are polluting. So let's do it because we have a code red and we have to do it. Let's do it because it's right, and let's do it for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Geoffrey. Thank you very much. Your perspective seems very urgent to be taken into account right now. So you see, your position is very clear. It's also ambitious because you are also looking at the leading role of European Union especially in the aviation sector. And you're right, we only agree on this. And it's interesting also what you are saying about the next generation with these climate champions, addressing in particular young people, young generation, because this is also a very pragmatic approach to look at the new generation with this climate champion in place. Also, the Dash Zero Net is a very also clear approach, towards a very short deadline, not 2050, but 2030. So we must be in line with this also perspective. And let's say that what you are saying, it's fully in line with also what the next presentation, which are related to the experiences at the local level of mobility taken by the public administration, and they are also demonstrating. We will listen soon from the panelists how to foster green and ecological transition at local level in the territory. Just let me say one more word about the organizer, because you were mentioning also the Glasgow Declaration, which is a concrete tool that can be used by the organizer as well, because they are signing this declaration, but they are committed to implement the declaration in the Glasgow Declaration for Climate Action on Tourism in 1 year time. And the organizers of this session, today's session, are Mirabilia Network of Chambers of Commerce, Ecotrans Network on Sustainable Tourism, and the Poggibonsi Municipality of Poggibonsi in Tuscany. So those three organizers, they are already willing to implement the Glasgow Declaration on climate action, and to be ready to put in place an action plan on climate action on tourism in 1 year time, very short term. But let's see this later on. In any case, now I would like to give the floor, because we are jumping in panel 2 in this local approach, bottom-up approach, as I was saying before. So I give the floor now to Mr. Roberto Gambassi, who is Councillor for Mobility and Environmental Municipality of Poggibonsi in Tuscany. Roberto, the floor is yours.
Ciao, everybody. Yes, I'm Roberto Gambassi, Poggibonsi, the Councillor for the Environment and Mobility. And I just want you to show briefly what we did and what we are planning for the future. Poggibonsi is exactly in the middle between Siena and Florence, 30 kilometers each. And it is also the heart of a valuable agricultural system, central to tourism interest and home to small and medium enterprises in various sectors, camper and caravan as well. Poggibonsi is the train station of San Gimignano, Colle Valdelsa, Volterra, the entire area of Chianti, and it's been crossed even by Via Francigena. All very well-known brands, I met. It is the natural getaway railway and road to this touristic system, besides the models of quality of life and well-being known all over the world. So we have a small territory, 70 square kilometers, many inhabitants, 30,000, but same problem to connect mobility needs of many kinds of citizens. At the moment, the live situation, the one that this picture shows, is that we have about 30 kilometers of cycle path, several colors, and you can see that in the pictures. The longest one is 7 kilometers, connect Poggibonsi to Colle Valdelsa along an old railway track in disuse. The second one is the first part of the Strade Bianche, that is the surface of our country roads. You know, you can see in TV, and it's very well known. Along the Via Francigena towards Monteriggioni and Siena, that are quite close to Poggibonsi. The longest one inside the city, that is called Stradina Verde, is more or less 2 kilometers, is the green line in the figure. And it's built on the embankment of the Staggia torrent. It is a very useful axis for cycling and pedestrian mobility, any kind. To fix the problem of a previously uncoordinated planning, our government action has two main goals. One is to link existing cycle path within the city. Paths are born spontaneously in the past, but are now destined to converge in an organic network for touristic uses. We have several historical attractions along the path: Rocca di Staggia, Fortezza del Cassero. This network will allow the bike to be more attractive even for citizens, for their leisure and sport uses, in particular for their displacement from home to work. We have several schools, 3 industrial areas, the hospital, all of them located along the future path and connection. The second goal we have is to connect the internal city path system that branches off the territory in all directions, with the potential to function as the starting point of every possible use, touristic, but even commercial and industrial. So which tools and action do we use? First of all, we have just finished the drafting of 3 planning tools. The Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan for the city livability, with choices awakening motorized traffic for the benefit of collective use of the public services and spaces. We adopt Sustainable Energy and Climate Action Plan, the Copenhagen measure strategies, obviously, to reduce greenhouse gases emission, even with the bike routes for the mobility of residents and visitors as an alternative travel arrangement. We move along Poggibonsi for Future as a part of participation in presence and online, where citizens and categories are involved in decisions regarding energy saving, waste, and sustainable mobility. We call it Poggibonsi for Future, partly taking up the Friday for Future slogan, just because we think that every day of the week should be Friday for food, for good attitudes and lifestyle, not just one. All of these projects have just been financed and realized. The master plan of mobility in the province of Siena gives us the opportunities to use the itineraries for the development of the bike tourism in the Siena area. The electric bus rapid transit connects Poggibonsi to Florence with an electric transport system to facilitate tourist mobility. These 2 actions will be introduced next as good practices. We share with other 8 municipalities the project Beyond the Borders. That is an action plan to make the banks of the river Elsa suitable for the cycling, connecting Poggibonsi to the last Toscan cycle network and touristic system, the one along the river Arno, the river between Florence and Pisa. It's about 40 kilometers, this connection in the banks of the river Elsa. With Pedibus project, we walked every day our children to school, accompanied by volunteers, 6 lines and 6 schools. and it is in progress, the construction of a cycle path and zone 30 in San Gallo Street, via San Gallo, that is 1 kilometer in the center of the city, improving livability, accessibility, and use of spaces. We have just activated the location of 12 electric recharging stations for cars in the municipal area. Going to the conclusion, we want to measure ourselves at the doing level. After planning, that it is the time. We are committed for our part to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, the impact on climate change, and to improve at the same time the quality of life of citizens and external users, tourists and workers. We just want to represent a good practice that is able to pave the way. The assumption of responsibility is enough to assume greenhouse gases reduction as the guiding light of any territorial planning for the next 30 years. With these efforts at the local level, I believe we are taking action to raise the awareness that a new sense of community is being built. We ask regional and European policies to enhance and reward, or to continue to enhance and to reward those who are trying to do, those who are committed. If Cinzia, you ask me a suggestion to close, approach as our one, bottom up, the good practices of sustainable, I can say that are simple, are almost never extraordinary as our one. We are not extraordinary in what we've done and what we're going to do. Often easy to implement and certainly replicable. So they must represent the future path for a greater active involvement in the population and local administration that do not feel this need at the moment. Thank you so much to everybody.
Thank you, Roberto. This is exactly what we wanted to listen, you know, how to be engaged at the local level, how the community is also involved, and also you are also explaining very well the 3 dimensions of sustainability, because you are taking into account not only the environmental aspect, but also the social aspect for the quality of life, to ensure the quality of life of the citizens at the local level. There is a very great example of best practice on the commitment. You show the commitment of the local municipality. You also demonstrate how important it is to have this strategic and holistic approach, intersectoral approach, putting together mobility, transport with tourism, also looking at, you know, the connection with other municipalities not only in one small territory, but having this systemic vision. So this is also with a vision. And I really, I like the idea to join forces and to create a critical mass from the ground with this bottom up. That's why today we wanted to show this interconnection between the levels, because this is key, this is fundamental, and you are not just saying, you are doing. So this is the time for doing, this is the time to act, and you are demonstrating that you are already there, you are already implementing also the, let's say, the SDG 13 climate action, urgent climate action, because you are already measuring the impact at the local level. So this is something that we have to take into account. We will continue. You were also already introducing your colleague for the master plan of province of Siena. For this reason, I will give the floor now to Mr. Cristiano Pellegrin. He is head of communication of province of Siena. He will explain, but please, Cristiano, try to be short, because then we will rush at the end. This is not good. So thank you very much, Cristiano. Go ahead.
Thank you, Cinzia. Good morning, everyone. I'm Cristiano Pellegrini, head of communication of the province of Siena, and with Claudio Torsellini will briefly illustrate the project of the Sustainable Mobility Master Plan of province. The province of Siena in September 2012 approved the master plan of the provincial network of street mobility, defining objectives and purposes for development and enhancement of cycling and cycling as with the provincial territory, confirm a sensitive and political action for the promotion of a culture of mobility that respects the environment and people, as a form of protection of the landscape, environmental heritage, and at the same time as an opportunity to attract one's own territory. The update was necessary for the evolution of national and regional legislation and the progressive growth of cycling in Tuscany. For the updating of the master plan, which proved to be an excellent long-term strategic tool, the original strategic objectives were confirmed. 1, definition and updating of a provincial network of cycling tourism routes. 2, implementation of bike train intermodality. 3, protection, enhancement of cycling tourism routes. 4, respect for ethical principles in sporting events. 5, promotion, awareness, and dissemination of the project in provincial, national, and international territory through the web and various marketing tools. Before proceeding to the technical detail of the plan, it is appropriate to contextualize the area of interest and competence of the province of Siena. We are naturally in Italy. The region is Tuscany, in the south of region. The territory is analyzed for 1, topography and landscape, 2, natural beauty, 3, medieval city and village, 4, the network of roads. Next, please. Siena is the capital. The territory of province is famous and known all over the world, characterized by a hill landscape, the Monti del Chianti to the northeast, the Montagnola in the west, in the center, Crete Senesi and Val d'Arbia, to the south, Val di Chiana, Val d'Orcia, and Montamiata. A fundamental role is played by the city of Poggibonsi, a railway access gate and terminal for tourist flows from the north, Pisa and Florence. A starting point for connection that they go beyond the master plan, but also a crucial junction for the master plan itself. Next, please. Of exceptional value are the natural of the place. 18 protected natural reserve, thermal spring and geothermal energy, the landscape, Val d'Orcia and Crete Senesi, medieval village and monuments, San Gimignano, Monteriggioni, Pienza, enological and gastronomic products, Brunello di Montalcino, Chianti, Nobile di Montepulciano, events and manifestation of enormous value among all the palio of Siena. Next, please. Next, please. A network of paths and of traffic driveways are an increasing popular destination for walkers, Via Francigena, and cyclists for tourist purposes, and participants in events, Eroica, and sporting events in continuous growth. Municipality and association of the territory in order to acquire all the information relating the paths, existing project to projects in progress, also recovering those positive action and agreements. It was therefore a question of not wasting toward doing, rather of recovering, enhancing, sharing, and standardizing within the coordinating plan, proceeding with the following object. Update the network of master plan routes, 74 routes, about 4,700 kilometers. Establish the criteria for classifying the segment of the cycle network, mapping the network, adopt a format aimed at guaranteeing homogeneous standard in the evaluation of the routes, in the use of unique terminologies and sign compliance with the regulation. Next, please. Next, please. Next, please. The routes were grouped into 3 categories: A, cycle routes; B, itinerary cycle; 3, cycle-linking itinerary. The A, all cycle tracks, pedestrian areas and residential areas, greenways and nature trails, road without traffic or with low traffic belong to the cycle, taking into account the definition of the law. B, itinerary cycle. With cycle itineraries, most of the routes have been classified through the format suite roads, studied and used for the specific plane. The cycling itineraries are of the local type for mixed use, walkers and cyclists, greenway, cycle path, and paved connecting roads and low vehicular traffic. Next, please. The entire network of routes is developed on existing roads, asphalted roads and paved roads paths, and only short sections cover cycle paths in a protected area or disused railway section. The main structure is represented by the cycle paths which, in a longitudinal and transversal sense, cross the territory, continuing with connection beyond the borders of the province and the Tuscany region itself, Via Francigena, Due Mari, Ciclovia del Sole. Following the cycle excursion itineraries, the essential part of the master plan, which branches off from the cycle paths towards all the major center, and for which a classification for called format suite road has been tested and adopted. In particular, after a period of experimentation.
Sorry, Cristiano, try to be shorter because we have to give the floor.
Okay.
Yeah.
The last, next. With reference to the rules of the highway code, the type of road sign that municipalities will be able to adopt within the rules for direction sign and route name, and information and educational sign have been standardized. Thank you for the attention.
Thank you very much, Cristiano. Sorry if I was pushing you, but the time is running and I'm afraid that the other speakers will not have time. But in any case, great what you were mentioning at the end, this concept of sweet route. The sweet route is also fascinating, but it's very interesting that you are combining with this sustainable tourism master plan, mobility master plan, you are combining the two aspects of mobility, sustainability, slow mobility like cycling routes with the cultural routes, with the excellencies on the territory, the beauty of the territory. So, and also adding standards and criteria, which is great. This is very important because you are not just designing slow mobility routes by like cycling routes, but you are taking into account the importance of making in very clear criteria and standards in place. So this is a very interesting approach, and I hope other municipality together, like following the example of the province of Siena, they can follow your model, because this is a very excellent model to be replicated in other territories. So thank you very much, Cristiano. And now I just to conclude this panel on with the bottom-up approach, still in Tuscany, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Alberto Berti, who is the mobility manager of the metropolitan city of Florence. The floor is yours, Mr. Alberto.
Hi, everybody. The presentation will show how the tourists will move around the Chianti area with local public transport. The project for a new connection system between the town of Boggibonsi and the city of Florence, which crosses the Chianti-Fiorentino region, is currently being drafted. This intervention is considered a priority intervention by the Sustainability Urban Mobility Plan of the Metropolitan City of Florence. The Chianti-Fiorentino area, as we already said, is an area that don't need any presentation, an area which is known worldwide for its beauty, visited by more than 1 million tourists every year. The administration of the territory have activated the procedure to make it part of the UNESCO heritage. However, it's not only a tourist that crowded East Street, but also students and workers move daily in this area, and between Boggibonsi and Florence for a total of 30,000 trips daily. These trips are done by private car and by local public transport. So the demand of mobility is high, and it's necessary to introduce a mobility system which can be efficient and as much as possible sustainable from a social, economical, and environmental point of view. Due to the delicacy of the territory, a railway system is not a possible solution. So it has been therefore decided to design a suburban bus rapid transit line. Environmentally speaking, this will be a much less invasive solution by using the existing road network, once improve it with the introduction of reserve lanes and with the introduction of priority traffic light system for those buses that we run on the infrastructure. Next, please. The bus rapid transit service will be developed with the electrical vehicles powered by batteries. There will be two charges: a slower charge at the night depot and a rapid recharge system at the two terminals in Florence and Poggibonsi. The vehicle carrying out the service are articulated electric 18 meters long buses. The preliminary operating model of Poggibonsi Florence lines provides a service from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. The frequencies of the service would be a bus every 20 minutes in the soft time and a bus every 15 minutes during the peak times. Finally, the area will be served by modern and ecological buses. The past June, we carried out a road test with e-bus, and it was super interesting because we did it during summer period without atmospheric phenomena, and the test allowed the assessment of energy consumption along the route. In red, in the little graphic on the left side, we have the altitude profile of the route with a different height of 350 meters, and in blue, the trend of battery consumption. It is interesting, they contain total value of consumption at sustainable levels. From an environmental point of view, the new service will allow to move 15% of citizens who today use a private car to the public transport. This model shift will decrease the number of trips by private cars in this area of 255,000 a year. Considering an average length by trip by private car of 25 kilometers, the new service will lead to a CO2 reduction of about 306 tons per year. On the other hand, it will be equally important how to produce the electricity that will be used for the service. And the electricity would have to be produced through renewable sources, and we are working it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alberto. It was very interesting to listen how also investing on electricity mobility, on transports like electric buses to connect the suburban area. It's very crucial, and you can also you have the capacity also to measure the impact, the environmental impact, looking at these tools that you are putting in place in the municipality of Florence, but also in the area around the surrounding area. This is what we have to do, and this is fully in line. Just to add what is also required by the Glasgow Declaration, the measurement and the decarbonization. So you are in this direction. I just would like to add, before jumping into the last panel, the panel with the European dimension, that 1 month ago we had the summit, UNWTO summit on tourism, and the outcome of this summit were highlighting 3 keywords: collaboration, innovation. And the other one was also the financing aspect. So financing is also fundamental, and that's the reason why we need to be supported by, especially by the public institutions, to go in the same direction together and to invest in financial terms also in these initiatives and actions, concrete actions from the bottom, from the ground. Anyway, so let's go now to the final panel. As I said, this is more European, bringing together European dimension, but also with the example from the initiatives taken in particular from the chambers of commerce, which are the house of the enterprises in the field of tourism and cultural tourism. So let's listen 2 minutes the intervention from Mr. Vito Signati, who is the director for the Mirabilia network, and then we will give the floor to Mr. Herbert Emere, who is the president of Ecotrans network. So, and And then I hope we will have time also to listen the last pre-registered video of Mr. Riello, who is the responsible of Union Camere, and this for ecological transition in Union Camere. Okay, let's listen to the video.
The video is an example of how Mirabilia Network is promoting ecological, slow and sustainable tourism through the Chamber of Commerce from Italy, France, Greece, Bulgaria, Croatia and Spain that are part of the network. The Mirabilia Network was created 12 years ago as an Italian association of Chamber of Commerce to promote lesser-known UNESCO sites through the collaboration between the Chamber of Commerce and the managing authorities of the sites. The Mirabilia Network was established to join together areas united by their historical, cultural and environmental importance, an interaction between institutional and economic figures and between governance models underpinning the development policies of local territories. Mirabilia aims to integrate the multiple nature of experiences in the sector of tourism, culture and services, while also fostering an exchange of skills in the processes of social and economic development, about lines as culture tourism, artistic handicrafts, wine and food, digital innovation and, of course, environment green. It promotes a green and ecological policy by encouraging tourism businesses to adopt circular economy models able to combine the beauty of the places and the cultural excellences to be preserved as tangible and not tangible UNESCO heritage, with the quality of the services to be provided in compliance with environment and territory, encouraging customer tourists to adopt behaviors more responsible and less prone to waste and of any kind. Mirabilia's commitment for the environmental sustainability of tourism business has been clear since its establishment. This is confirmed by the positive outcome of the application to host this morning's COP26 side event, and the signing of the Glasgow Declaration for Climate Action in Tourism. Thank you for your attention and I wish good work to all the speakers.
On behalf of the Chamber of Commerce in Italy and abroad, we are delighted for having been selected by the European Commission, DG Clim, to host this important side event to COP26. I also would like to thank the EU Climate Pact Ambassador, Dottoressa Cinzia De Marzo, for giving us the opportunity to show our initiative in supporting tourism enterprises to achieve the climate neutrality as common goal. As already highlighted by the previous speakers, from the global to local perspective, tourism ecosystems are heavily affected by the climate change impact. A realistic and progressive approach is needed to implement green and digital transition in the sector. For this reason, Chamber of Commerce, acting as a mediator and helping disseminate initiatives, information programs, could play a major role in supporting SME in their task to become more greener, digital and competitive, based on sustainable business model for upskilling and reskilling the tourism task force. A transition pathway bringing together all the stakeholders is extremely important, taking into consideration the following priorities. Need to increase the number of public grants at the level, national, EU, international, while simplifying the process to obtain funding in conjunction with less red tape. Need to invest in infrastructure to allow a greener mobility and climate neutral tourism ecosystem, while increasing the number of proximity travel with climate neutral vehicles and reducing the emission of local transport. Need to better coordinate awareness campaign by relevant stakeholders rather than fragmentation in myriad of events. Need for diagnosis initial assessment report of current situation of this destination, as well as the analysis of good management practice that are being developed in the other destination to define a starting point and design new planning and management policies enabling to benchmark. By converse, there is a need to measure the destination sustainability management process to monitor their performance and progress for over time. Need for increased attention in tackling the use of massification of certain destinations and tourism activities, given then in the most generous, these result in unsustainable practices. Need to substantially increase the use of sustainability labels by tourism accommodation. The label Ospitalità Italiana, promoted by the Italian Chambers of Commerce, is clear evidence of what can be locally done by activities stakeholders. Better stakeholders coordination can support the implementation of this pathway. In this respect, the role of the Destination Management Organization, DMO, should be enhanced. The activity developed by the Chamber of Commerce of Verona in this context show the potential of these tools. In addition, data collection is essential to ensure sustainable management at destination level based on the measurement and using monitoring tools. Unioncamere and ISNAR have recently developed an artificial intelligence big data platform on tourism, which allow crawling, integrating, analyzing large amount of data from different sources and managing the heterogeneity of information generated by tourists and visitors through social network, the web blog and communities. It can provide precious information and knowledge to identify trends and development patterns, information and evolution of tourism destination and tourism products, assess the performance achieved by the campaigns in the sector through data analysis technique. Let me finally say that the recent signature of the Glasgow Declaration for Climate Action in Tourism by Mirabilia Network and the other organizations involved in this event to COP26 confirm our willingness to be committed in implementing the concrete action, establishing intersectorial synergies with all other players, public and private, to achieve the 2030 target of climate neutrality.
Would like to give the floor to Mr. Herbert Emele, the president of Ecotrans, because we have to close the session. I'm sorry, we are rushing as usual at the last presentation. We are in a hurry. So Herbert, please, the floor is yours to conclude the session.
Around the world, in future, our main concern will no longer be whether we can travel to every place on Earth. Our main interest will be whether it is worthwhile arriving there. These words are more than 100 years old, and with our European Ecotrans network, since 30 years, we are trying to contribute to maintaining what we like when traveling, and we signed the Glasgow Declaration this week. Next, please. Today, all travel and tourism stakeholders need to collectively contribute to fighting climate change and halting the loss of biodiversity, strengthen circular economies, creating decent jobs and income for local population. With support from the European Union, a group of chambers of commerce, hotel associations, destinations, universities, and Ecotrans in Austria, Bulgaria, Croatia, Germany, Italy, Romania, are demonstrating with the European Tourism Going Green 2030 initiative how to even go beyond legislation and to boost sustainable tourism in Europe through voluntary and credible certification for tourism businesses. Next, please. There are 200 tourism certifications out there in order to demonstrate the environmental and sustainability contributions of tourism businesses. These you can all see on the Tourism 2030 certification quick finder. And next, please. No, the one before, please. And Ecotrans has taken over the role to map all certified businesses worldwide. So far, these are only 2%, but it is very treasure of advanced and more green businesses, destinations, and tour operators to build on and to expand the 2% to 20% by 2030. You can find them all on the green travel maps, 16,000 items published so far, and these are used. The German National Tourist Board, with its Feel Good campaign to promote sustainable tourism and responsible traveling in Germany, are using the map with 1,000 certified hotels and camping sites. The Travelport Austria company is using the green travel maps to match the certified hotels with the products of the Swiss and Austrian tour operators, which are sold in 1,500 travel agencies.
Sorry, Herbert.
The Fairway
can you go to the conclusion,
booking system is a startup, one of many out there, who are using the green travel maps and shall use the green travel maps in order to identify and promote the better choice to the consumer. Next, please.
Herbert, you should be short and you should conclude. Go to the conclusion, please.
Then we can make the fun. Yes. Measure, market, and monitor what we claim to promote as green travel and tourism. And there are two indicators out of many out there, which I want to put on the top of indicators to be used for our own measuring. The greenhouse gas emissions in terms of kilogram per traveler and overnight. Yeah, the shorter you stay, the wider, the longer, and the wider you travel, the worse. The longer you stay, the shorter to travel, and the better you use low emission transport means, the better. And the second indicator, the percentage of credibly certified tourism businesses. There is no time for wait now. Let's bring now the 2% to 10% to 20% within the next 6, 7, 8, 10 years. And this is not impossible. There are many organizations out there who can join synergies and create synergies and offer low travel emission transport, green hotels, contribute through their certification and their, let's say, activities to reduce the pressure on biodiversity, contribute to rich biodiversity. For example, not only through reducing emissions, which cannot be easily reduced within few years to zero, but also prefer insetting rather than offsetting of carbon emissions. And insetting means along the own tourism supply chain to contribute to reducing carbon emissions and to use opportunities for offsetting in the destinations. This will create benefits for all and contribute to maybe a common Travel Green Europe network, and all the opportunities for networking are there. Our European Tourism Going Green project is providing a networking tool. Gordon mentioned in the beginning Travel Green Europe, and as Oliver and Jeffrey and all the speakers, Mirabilia said, Europe has the unique opportunity to be the leader in the world to achieve with tourism linked with all the other sectors and with many NGOs and with research institute and consultants and stakeholders
Herbert, sorry, we have to conclude.
in tourism,
we are running out.
Making tourism more sustainable, to be the leader and to show that until 2030, 40% or 50% or 60% of the pressure onto both climate and biodiversity can be achieved. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, thank you. What you are saying, it's great. It's very important that you are showing with the results how to continue. So that's the session is over. And thank you very much for listening and for attending our panel. Our three panels, very complementary among them. Thank you very much. Bye. Bye-bye.